Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I've got another Master Duel video for you all. So today we're going to be covering the new iteration of Branded Despia now that the Bystials and other branded support has hit. This is Branded Bystial Despia. And we have included not only a lot of the new cards, but a lot of older branded cards that have not seen as much play that are now quite useful for a lot of the combos moving forward. One disclaimer I want to throw out there is that this iteration of branded is a lot different than past iterations that we've seen. So much so that I have definitely had to learn a lot of new combo lines, and there are probably a lot of options that could be available to me if I played different cards, different ratios. I just want to kind of throw out a disclaimer that, like, I'm very new to this iteration of Branded Despia, so you might be seeing like changing ratios and plays moving forward, but I will definitely make sure to keep you all updated as I continue to practice, play with, and learn more about this awesome new deck. But what we've got so far in terms of like experience in the games we're going to see already shows off just how powerful this new iteration is. We've got a lot of new stuff going on here. Of course, the Bystial package, which we've covered in great detail on the channel already, is making an appearance here. I would like to include a copy of Baldrake, maybe even dropping the second Saronir, but I mean, I'm already at 42 cards. To be fair, Branded is a deck that can very often get away with still being very consistent, playing pretty much any number between 40 and 60, but you know me, unless I'm going for a 60 card build, I like to keep my decks as close to 40 as possible. But just based on what I wanted to try and what I was seeing with combo lines, I really found myself not getting much further down than 42. To be fair, I could drop like maybe one of the Mercouriers. You don't necessarily need to, although having two is very nice. And then one of the Super Polys, it's a similar thing where like 3 is not needed, but the third copy is extremely nice. So ultimately just decided to keep pretty much everything, well, not everything, but you know what I mean. Decided to keep both the second Mercourier and third Super Poly, and just played with the ratios you're seeing here, which did work out for me pretty well. So not only do we have the Bystials, but as far as new branded cards go, most notable is Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous. We're playing 2 copies here. I know I said in my pack opening video that I was going to make a playset, but you don't actually need a playset. You can honestly get away with 1, although having 2 is very nice because this is one of many cards that you would like to see pretty much every single time. In fact, it's the reason we're playing 3 Fusion Deployment as well. Fusion Deployment, though it is a UR, do note that you can make this from the Cyber Dragon structure deck. Rather, it is in the Cyber Dragon structure deck, so you don't need to craft this UR. You can just drop 1,500 gems on those decks and not only have a bunch of cool Cyber cards, but also 3 copies of Fusion Deployment. So yeah, Cartesia has a very strong ability to fuse from the field or hand. Well, she has to be on the field, but the fusion materials can be from the field or hand. As a quick effect during the main phase, which is very good, and then if she is used as a fusion material, she then adds herself from the graveyard to the hand during the end phase. So a very nice recurring fusion engine. We no longer need to mess around with the edgems or poly or anything like that. To be fair, from what I can tell from some of the more recent comments, that engine was already a little outdated, but definitely with Cartesia, we don't need to mess with that anymore. We don't need polymerization. Cartesia is poly for days. In addition to that, we also have Granganol, the Dusk Dragon, which is Blazing Cartesia's fusion monster. This card is exceptionally good, being able to send a level 6 or higher light or dark monster from either your deck or extra deck to the graveyard upon summon. Occasionally, the second effect comes up as well, the ability to summon a Despia or Dogmatica, but in our case, Despia monster from the extra deck is how you're more often than not going to be summoning Despian Proskinian, which, especially against tier elements, but honestly just in general, is an extremely powerful option to have access to via the Granganol there. We're also playing a single copy of Rindbrum the Striking Dragon. I don't believe we actually end up summoning it during any of the games we're going to see here, but there are some combo lines where you can go into Rindbrum, which will not only allow you to negate your own Mirrorjade effect, so you can just send it for the cost without having to actually banish one of your cards, but you also then get to bounce one of your own cards, more often than not going to be your Lubellion, back to your hand. Lubellion can be sent from the deck to the graveyard via Branded Fusion, summoned back by its own effect. Then Rindbrum can potentially bounce Lubellion back to hand. You can then pitch Lubellion to add a Bystial, and then continue playing from from there. So just a lot of different options possible with a lot of these new additions. Some of the new additions, again, aren't even necessarily like new cards that just got released, but rather are older cards that I did not see play before. And most notably, Branded and White. There are some hands, some combo lines that will end you on a Branded and White, so that you can use this to more or less make your Mirrorjade at the end of your plays. We are also playing Springans Kitt, as well as a copy of Albion the Shrouded Dragon, and the Branded Retribution. We definitely did play these in like other branded decks before, but these 3 cards I typically played more in like 60 card branded decks, but again, just due to the new lines and the way the new support works, we definitely want to see these in a 40 card deck as well. Oh, and then we're playing a single copy of Branded Beast. This is going to be one of our branded spell and trap cards of choice. To set up with the Bystial Lubellion, the other, of course, being Branded Lost, which, again, we didn't always play this card in like, non-60 card builds, but moving forward, you definitely do. There is also the Branded Regain. I mean, I can talk about Branded Regain, Branded in High Spirits, just so many different, like, branded, Bystial Baldrake was the other one I was trying to think of just now. There's so many Bystial, Branded, Despia, Albaz cards in general, like Ecclesia, Incredible Ecclesia, the Virtuous, so many different things you could be playing here that, again, I'm not going to proclaim that this list is like the best list or the most like straightforward one you could be playing. It's just what I put together based on the combo lines that I did research on and what I thought would be best to, you know, use those lines, to do those lines, I guess. So alright, that's going to go ahead and I think do it for, well, it's not going to do it for discussion about this deck by a long shot. No, there are a lot of things to say about this, especially this iteration of Branded Despia, but I definitely would like more experience before I make any more concrete assessments about the deck. But we're going to go ahead and break this list down card by card, and then we've got some games to take a look at with this deck. So, we are on 1 Despain Tragedy, 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 Fallen of Albaz, 2 Aluber, the Jester of Despia, 2 Tri-Brigade Mercourier, 1 Springans Kitt, 2 Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous, 1 Bystial Magnamhut, 2 Bystial Saronir, 1 Bystial Druiswarm, 1 Albion the Shrouded Dragon, 1 Ad Libitum of Despia, 2 the Bystial Lubellion, 3 Fusion Deployment. We have the 1 Branded in White here. We have 3 Branded Fusion, 1 Branded Lost, 3 Super Polymerization, 2 Call by the Grave, 2 Branded Opening, 1 Branded in Red, 1 Branded Retribution, and then 1 Branded Beast. That's going to go ahead and do it for our main deck. For our extra deck, we're on 1 Mudragon of the Swamp, 1 Garura, Wings of Resonant Life, 1 Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, 1 Predaplant Dragostepelia, 1 Brigand the Glory Dragon. Again, another example of an older card that didn't see much play before, but now does, mainly as a means to search the Mercourier. We have 2 Albion the Branded Dragon, 1 Despian Quaretits, 1 Masquerade the Blazing Dragon, 2 Mirrorjade the Iceblade Dragon, 1 Lubellion the Searing Dragon, 1 Granganol the Dusk Dragon, 1 Rindbrum the Striking Dragon, and then finally 1 Despian Proskinian. And that's going to go ahead and do it for our list. Now let's look at some of this gameplay here. Alright, so our first game is going to be against Branded Bystial Tearlament. It's a pile of that kind of stuff, which is definitely a deck I'm going to be trying myself as well, as, you know, all this new Branded Fusion support definitely facilitates the Tearlaments in the deck as well. So, going to start with Bystial Lubellion Surge, going for Magnamhut. I often like to start with the Bystial Lubellion because a lot of the time people will Ash Blossom this, and they shouldn't be. They definitely should be using it on stuff like Branded Fusion, but in this case our opponent just doesn't have it in general. So, using the Branded Fusion to go for the Albion here, my plan was to then summon the Lubellion. I would have had to have used the Magnamhut in my hand, but I do think that would have been worth it. Unfortunately for me, though, my opponent's got a Saronir, so now I am forced to fuse because I can't stop using the Albion effect. I've already activated it. But now I'm going to have to go for Granganol. Thankfully, I did have access to Cartesia there. Opponent's going to try to use their Magnamhut on my Lubellion. I'm going to respond with my Magnamhut because the Bystials actually don't banish as part of the cost. They only target the card. So if you have a Bystial in hand and your opponent goes to use it on one of yours, and you have the ability to use the Bystial monster as a quick effect, you can banish the same thing they're targeting, and then they won't get to summon their Bystial. So End phase, we get to grab not only Mercourier, but the Druiswarm as well, which is very nice. Opponent's going to start with a Branded High Spirits, revealing Ecclesia, sending Granule to add Cartesia. Now we're going to be activating the Searing here, but I'm going to be using the Mercourier on the Searing. So I did think a moment during the actual game of if I wanted to use the Mercourier at this point. Ultimately decided that I didn't want my opponent to potentially mill a tier limit name. I also just didn't want them to extend, and they perhaps could have another tier limit monster as one of the remaining cards in hand that I don't know about. So I figured that the Mercourier was safe to use here. Also, we do have disruption planned for other pieces of their turn. We have the Druiswarm to counter their Bystial Magnamhut that I know is in their hand. We have the Branded Beast to potentially pop something like an Albaz that drops on the field. And if we opt not to summon Druiswarm, we still have the option to Super Poly here as well. So we definitely don't have any shortage of ways to respond. So definitely fine using the Mercourier to stop this particular Searing. Looks like they're moving their Saronir to attack mode, trying to summon the Magnamhut. I am going to summon the Druiswarm here. Now, I won't be able to Super Poly moving forward, but I think that's fine. I did debate if maybe I just wanted to save the Super Poly and use it on the Magnamhut and Saronir to go for like a Starving Venom, but ultimately decided that just holding on to it was probably the better call than just putting my own Druiswarm on the board. Opponent's going to battle over one of my monsters, I think my own Magnamhut, but that's totally fine. Moving forward, I'm just going to move to battle phase, battle over their Cartesia with Albion. Now I'm going to flip up Super Poly, pitching this Albaz I drew, fusing the Albion that already attacked with their Saronir in order to form the Predaplant Dragostepelia. Definitely going to try to push for lethal here. Opponent's going to use Saronir to send the Branded Regain, but my opponent does still have that Magnamhut in their hand, which moving forward, not moving forward, but I should have thought about moving forward is what I meant to say. I thought I had lethal, but this is still fine. We can still just use the Dragostepelia effect to negate the Magnamhut. Also banishing my Granule for a Proskinian, getting in a little bit of extra damage, but also we get to use the Proskinian effect to banish the Granule out of our opponent's graveyard. So I still have the Dragostepelia and Branded Beast as points of interaction here. My opponent's going to normal summon this Aluber after specialing Ecclesia. I will use Dragostepelia to negate the Aluber effect, because I figure if my opponent can, or if my opponent's going to Ecclesia for Albaz here, which they are, then I can just use the Branded Beast, sack off the Druiswarm, and then negate the Albaz. Now my opponent is left with one card in hand, and it is unknown, I believe, at this point, but it's unlikely that one card will be able to push them over my board, and in fact it is not enough, so my opponent is going to end up conceding. So GG's to Lori there. Let's go ahead and move on to our next duel. Alright, this next game is going to be a mirror match, so it's going to be against another branded Bystial Despia deck. No tier limits going on this time. It looks like we'll be taking the second turn here. So we did fortunately open with a Maxx. Always gotta love that. We have a Bystial Saronir as well here. Normally I do like to throw out the Maxx during the draw phase. Here I just wasn't paying attention. I think I was actually watching a YouTube video, which I do often do while I'm playing here. So opponent does have a call by for a Maxx, so it ultimately doesn't end up mattering here. I find myself wishing, as these branded cards are getting played, I've noticed that Master Duel isn't showing like win or use rates for them. Like with Branded Fusion, it just showed 2.85 copies per deck, which I could have told you that was probably going to be the case, but I want to make a video talking more about these win and play rate statistics or usage rate statistics, but yeah, I'm finding that Master Duel just doesn't seem to give them for certain cards, certain archetypes, which is odd. Like, it's odd to me that we don't get data for stuff like Branded Fusion, but if you summon, like, Fluffle Dog, the game will tell you that it's played 0.0014% of the time, but I'm like, yeah, but how often is, like, Branded Fusion played, you know? I just wish it was consistent. Like, it was consistently offered for all cards. I mean, it's not on any of the newer cards, which makes sense, because they just came out, so they don't have, you know, proper stats for them yet, but whatever. It's whatever. I don't know. I just, as someone who's a bit of a stats nerd, I would really like to see them, the figures for pretty much any given card in Master Duel. But that's gonna be a topic for another video. Here we are staring down a pretty scary turn one from our opponent. We did not manage to disrupt them too much, and in fact, they even fused with our Saronir and stopped our Maxx as well. So they're ending on a board with Mirrorjade, and they have access to the Branded Beast that they just said as well. So I'm going to start by using Lubellion to grab myself a Magnamhut, then normal summon the Springans Kitt. I'm going to add Branded Fusion, putting back the Branded Beast, and I'm just going to go for it with the Branded Fusion here. I figure, you know, if my opponent's got it, they got it. If they don't, they don't. We'll see how they end if they respond here. Going to start with an Albion. Going to use the Albion effect. Opponent's got Branded Beast to destroy the Albion, which is totally fine with me. I figured they had this card set up, but I thought they were going to use it at, I don't know, a different / better point. So I'm just going to go ahead and fire off the Mirrorjade here. Although, to be fair, that does also prevent the Albion from being used, to battle with, I suppose. I don't know. I guess the Branded Beast there wasn't, the worst play in the world, but gonna be using my Mercourier on this Rindbrum, so that way my opponent doesn't have access to some more advantage that would allow them to summon. I think either summon or add either Albaz. Oh, just summons Albaz. Got it. Alright, so we're gonna add Cartesia back during the end phase, utilizing the Albion to set Branded in red, although unfortunately this Branded in red, I realized too little too late, doesn't actually do anything here because I don't have any targets for it in my graveyard. So gonna be relying on Magnamhut, but you know, we at least did manage to power through most of our opponent's board there, and the rest of this is honestly looking more manageable. It might not look like it on the surface, but I do think that moving forward I have a pretty decent shot of winning here. Not summoning my Magnamhut here. That might look a little bit weird, but I want to be saving this Magnamhut actually for the Bystial monster that my opponent searches, but I actually end up searching Albion the Shrouded Dragon instead. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw out the Magnamhut during the end phase. My opponent is going to immediately concede. I do think that was a little bit premature, although it looks like it was due to a time limit. But I actually remember this game. When I activated the Magnamhut effect, they sat there for somewhere between the realm of 30 to 60 seconds before conceding. So they did have time left. I guess they just chose to time me out rather than hitting the surrender button, which I'm a little annoying, but whatever. It's not that big of a deal. But okay, we have a couple more games to look at, so let's go straight into this next duel here. All right, this game is going to be against Exorcist Sister. So Exorcist Sister, a little bit scary to play against. Not necessarily because of Dimension Shifter. Branded decks in general actually don't have too hard of a time playing through something like Dimension Shifter, but it's mainly a lot of just, the Exorcist effects themselves, and the fact that we're going second here as well. Oh, you know what? I actually want to write down that Dimension Shifter was 28% play rate, 20.8 rather. Yeah, I've been jotting down a lot of these cards that I've been seeing when the play rate thing comes up, because again, I would like to make a video talking about these play and win rates, and again, I'll talk about this more in the actual video, but I think, ooh, they actually have stats for Exorcisters. Castelpio had 56% win rate. Oh, I'm getting so distracted here. I'll have to check this out later, but yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of treating these win/usage rate statistics as, neat, when in fact I think that these are very, very important tools, very, very important and valuable information here. And wow, just these Exorcister win rates on these cards are definitely higher than I expected. Magnifica was what, almost 56%? Although, to be fair, that actually makes sense for Exorcister specifically, because a lot of the time the Exorcister loses, it's because they don't get their feet off the ground at all, right? Basically, they just don't end up getting to summon any of their extra deck monsters. But when they do get to play these extra deck monsters, it becomes a lot easier for them to win. I think that's more indicative of a very dichotic, seeing the Exorcist or Xyz monsters have that high of a win rate. It's even higher than Tearlaments. I don't think it means that Exorcister is a better deck than Tearlaments. I think it means that, the Exorcist or Xyz monsters, although that's actually, that main deck monster had a higher win rate as well. Sophia and Returnia both have 56.1%. Hang on. Oh my god, this is the worst commentary ever as I'm just frantically writing down these statistics, but That's actually very surprising to me to see Exorcist Sister have such a high win rate. Wow, 56%. That's a lot. That's a lot. But that's higher than Tier Limit's win rates on their cards, honestly. Their cards are more like 54%. But to actually talk about this game, now that it's actually finished, basically here, I knew that I was going to be relying mostly on Disruption to make sure my opponent wasn't able to do too much, too scary. We were able to use the Ash Blossom to stop the packs, and then using the Fallen of Albaz to bait out the Magnificat activation, we were then able to go to Super Poly to use Mirrorjade anyway, and then honestly from that point the game was just pretty much over. So yeah, wow, that was pretty... I'm saying wow because again of those statistics on the Exorcist Sister cards, but we'll talk about that more in a future video. For the time being, we have another duel to show off in this video, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. And for our last game, we're going to find ourselves up against Tier Limit. No Branded this time, just regular Tier Limit. Playing a lot of interesting techs, including a Gamma Seal and a Nibiru. I've actually been thinking about playing Nibiru in a lot of decks again lately because we're seeing less Tier Limit focus, although again, Tier Limit is still like the deck to beat, but we're seeing less Tier Limit focus and a bit more of a spread since these new cards came out of what's going on in the meta. Now, to be fair, a lot of what's going on in the meta is also Sprite, which Nibiru is not super great against a lot of the time because of Gigantic, but also there's a lot of people who are just not playing around Nibiru and Sprites in that regard, so I don't know, Nibiru, I think it might be time for this card to come back. I might be trying it in some builds moving forward, we'll see. So opponent's going to start with the Rhino Heart. I chose to Ash Blossom it here. That looks really weird, but I was like, you know, my opponent's only got 3 other cards in hand. I don't want them to get Kickalos because then they just battle over this kit, and I don't really have anything to do, probably, potentially, with this Super Poly, so I was like, I'm just going to Ash Blossom the Rhino Heart here. Opponent's got a Maxx in response to this Albaz summon, which is kind of confusing because I don't even have anything to summon with it via Albaz's effect, and I definitely did not plan on special summoning this turn anyway. Normal Albaz beat over my opponent's Rhino Heart was the plan from the get-go. Opponent does have another Rhino Heart here. This time they do get to send the Merly. But see what I mean? The Tier Limit cards have a 54.4% win rate, but those Exorcist Sister cards that were like 56%, that's really interesting to me. Even the main deck Exorcist Sister cards were 56%. So, very, very interesting. Alright, opponent did not get super great mills, which is obviously good for me. They're really only getting the Scream Search and the Shadal Beast draw here. They do still get to bring back the Rhino Heart with the Kickalos, though, and mill another 5. And here they are going to end up milling the Shiren and the Soliek. So there's the rest of those mills that I didn't want to see from my opponent. Yeah, here at this point, I don't even really know how Super Poly can help me as far as like stopping their plays. I'm more focused on using it to like not die. Well, I also didn't want to Super Poly away my opponent's Kickalos because that would just trigger the mill 5 effect anyway. My opponent's got an Abyss Dweller coming down here, which is definitely scary. I don't want to get Zeused, so I'm going to end up fusing Albaz with the Dweller here. Ideally, I really would have liked to have done it with the Dragostepelia, but again, if I don't fuse with Dweller, my opponent then just goes into Zeus, and even if I've gotten rid of the Dragostepelia, which would negate Mirrorjade, my opponent's Zeus is just going to send it to the graveyard anyway, so ultimately didn't really end up mattering too much there. I did end up milling an Albion off my opponent's Calbeck here, which I'm going to try to use to set up the Retribution, or rather the Retribution to set the Branded Fusion, but no, my opponent's just going to chain the Keldo and then go ahead and stop that there, which I expected to happen. I just figured I'd get the Keldo out of the way, so gonna battle with the Mirrorjade. Opponent's got the Soliek in response. Unfortunately, they are able to fuse the Shiren. They have a lot of stuff in the graveyard there. And they also have the Dragostepelia to stop my Mirrorjade. So between Soliek and Dragostepelia, my Mirrorjade was never banishing anything here. Looks like my opponent is going to end up going for the Kaleidoheart to bounce my Mirrorjade. That way, it won't trigger the Mirrorjade effect to send the whole board to the graveyard. I can bring back Aluber and negate the Dragostepelia here, but things are like definitely not looking super great. This Branded in red might help me find something, but that's a pretty big maybe. Yeah, at this point, my opponent's just going to normal summon the Reinhardt, sending the Shiren. Now they get to use the Kaleidoheart to bounce back the Branded loss. You see how unthreatened they feel by the Branded Red. They're not even going to try to force me to use it here. They're just going for it. As they summon an El Shaddai Winda. Alright, now Branded Red is going to bring back the Albaz. Pretty much last-ditch effort here to try to not die this turn. I'm going to make a Masquerade here. But honestly, even if I don't die this turn, which I actually don't because of the Masquerade, I'm still going to be in a pretty bad spot. I'm in top deck mode against an El Shaddai Winda and a Dragostepelia, and I really don't have any realistic chance of coming back. So yeah, top deck Lubellion, and I'm just going to ultimately concede after that. So unfortunately, we did not take this W against Tier Limit, but there are still plenty of games against Tier Limit moving forward. And especially as I learn this deck more and more, I will expect that that matchup will go more better for us in the next one. But as always, if you noted any misplays I made that I could have potentially turned the game around, definitely do not be afraid to put those in the comments. In fact, that's a lot of the reason why I show the games that I lose, is because I figure maybe somebody will spot something that I didn't, and then I can know for next time how to play out of a situation like that. But I think that's going to go ahead and do it for this video, so let's move now to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me, not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation. You do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot, as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is Xlex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.